The refugee camps stretched across the gray moon like a wound that would not heal. Thousands of tents and metal shelters sat in neat rows, holding the broken remains of species that had lost everything. Captain Daniel Park had seen many such camps in his 3 years of service with the Galactic Coalition forces. Each one told the same story: war, destruction, displacement. The details changed, but the suffering remained constant. Daniel stood at the edge of the processing center, watching new arrivals shuffle through the gates. His unit had been assigned to security duty here for the past 2 months. It was boring work for a soldier, but someone had to do it. The Coalition liked having humans around for these jobs. They said humans were good with refugees, patient, kind. Daniel did not know if that was true for all humans, but he tried his best. New group coming in. "Captain," said Sergeant Grace Kim, walking up beside him. She held a data tablet in her hands, scrolling through information. "They call themselves the Valari." Daniel watched the newcomers enter the camp. They were unlike any species he had seen before. Their skin was a soft lavender color, like flowers in spring. Their hair was silver and long, falling past their shoulders like waterfalls of moonlight. They moved with a strange grace, as if they were dancing even when they walked. But their eyes told a different story. Their eyes were violet and large and filled with a sadness so deep it made Daniel's chest hurt just to look at them. "What happened to them?" he asked. Grace checked their tablet. Their homeworld was destroyed 50 years ago. A mining corporation called the Consortium stripped it of all resources. The planet died. They have been wandering ever since, moving from camp to camp, station to station. No one will give them a permanent home. "Why not?" Grace was quiet for a moment. "There is a stigma, sir. Other species consider them unlucky. Something about their biology makes others uncomfortable. I do not have all the details." Daniel frowned. He had learned many things since humanity joined the galactic community. One of the most disappointing lessons was that aliens could be just as cruel and stupid as humans. Maybe more so. They had technology that seemed like magic. They could travel between stars in days. But they still found reasons to hate each other, to look down on those who were different. He noticed something strange about the Valari group. Almost all of them were female. He counted maybe 1 male for every 10 females. The females moved in tight clusters, keeping their heads down, avoiding eye contact with the guards and workers. They acted like people who expected to be hurt. "Get them processed quickly," Daniel told Grace, "and make sure our people treat them with respect. I will not have anyone in my unit acting like the rest of the galaxy." "Yes, sir." Daniel began his patrol around the camp. He walked slowly, nodding to refugees of different species, checking on supply stations, making sure everything was running smoothly. But his mind kept returning to the Valari. There was something about them that would not let him go. That sadness in their eyes. That careful way they moved, like animals expecting a trap. He found himself walking toward the section where they had been housed. It was on the edge of the camp, far from the main facilities. Of course it was. The outcasts always got pushed to the margins. That was when he saw her. She sat alone on a metal crate, separate from the others. Her arms were wrapped around her knees, and she was watching the human soldiers with an expression he could not quite read. It was not fear. It was not hope. It was something in between. Curiosity, maybe. Or disbelief. Most of the Valari avoided looking at anyone. But this one stared openly. Her violet eyes moved from soldier to soldier, studying them like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Then her eyes found Daniel. He stopped walking. For a moment, neither of them moved. The noise of the camp seemed to fade away. There was only her, sitting on that crate, and him, standing in the dust, and something passing between them that he could not name. She was beautiful. That was his first thought, and he pushed it away immediately. She was a refugee under his protection. He had no business thinking such things. But the thought came back anyway, stubborn and persistent. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with her lavender skin or silver hair. There was strength in her face, intelligence, a fire that had not gone out despite everything she must have suffered. Daniel made himself start walking again. He approached her slowly, the way he would approach a wounded animal. She did not run. She did not look away. She just watched him come closer, her expression never changing. "Hello," he said. It seemed like a stupid thing to say, but he did not know what else to offer. "Hello," she replied. Her voice was soft and musical, with an accent he had never heard before. She spoke Galactic Common, the shared language of the Coalition, but she made it sound like poetry. "I am Captain Daniel Park. I am in charge of security for this section of the camp. Is there anything you need? Anything I can help with?" She tilted her head, stunning him. "You are human, yes. I have never met a human before. Your species is new to the galaxy. We joined the Coalition 3 years ago." "I know. I read about it." She paused. "You are different from what I expected." "How so?" The report said humans were primitive, violent, dangerous. A small smile touched her lips, the first sign of warmth he had seen from any Volari. "But you asked if I needed help. None of the other guards have done that." Daniel felt a flash of anger at the other guards, at the whole system that treated these people like garbage. But he kept his voice calm. "Well, if you do need anything, you can ask for me. Captain Park, I will do what I can." She nodded slowly. "My name is Yuna." "Yuna," he repeated. "That is a beautiful name." Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or pain. He could not tell. "Thank you, Captain Park. No one has said that to me in a very long time." He wanted to stay. He wanted to ask her 1,000 questions about her people, her past, her story. But duty called, and he had already lingered too long. "I will see you around, Yuna," he said. "Yes," she replied softly. "I think you will." Daniel walked away, but he looked back once before he turned the corner. She was still watching him, that strange expression still on her face. And he knew, with a certainty he could not explain, that his life had just changed forever. The weeks passed slowly in the refugee camp, but Daniel did not mind. He found himself looking forward to each day in a way he had not felt since he first joined the military. The reason was simple, even if he did not want to admit it to himself. The reason was Yuna. He did not plan to see her every day. It just happened. His patrol route somehow always took him past the Volari section. His breaks somehow always occurred near the small building where she spent her time. And she was always there, sitting by the window or walking among her people, her silver hair catching the light like a beacon calling him home. They talked. At first, it was small things. The weather on this gray moon, the quality of the food in the camp, the little problems of daily life that everyone shared. But slowly, the conversations grew deeper. She told him about her old life before the consortium came. She had been a historian, she said, a keeper of stories. She had spent her days in great libraries, preserving the tales and songs and memories of her people. "All gone now," she said one evening, as they sat together on a bench outside the supply building. The artificial sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of orange and pink. The libraries burned. The books turned to ash. Thousands of years of history destroyed in a single day. "I am sorry," Daniel said. The words felt weak, but he meant them. Yuna shook her head. "I saved what I could. I have it here." She held up the battered datapad she always carried. "Fragments, pieces. It is not much, but it is something. As long as I'm alive, my people's story will not be forgotten." Daniel looked at her with new respect. She was not just a survivor. She was a guardian, a protector of something more precious than gold or jewels. She was protecting memory itself. "You are amazing," he said, before he could stop himself. She laughed, a sad and hollow sound. "I am a refugee with a broken tablet. That is all. No, you are much more than that." She looked at him for a long moment, her violet eyes searching his face. "You are strange, Daniel Park. You do not treat me like the others do." "What do you mean?" "The other species. Even the other guards here. They look at me like I am dirty, like I'm something to avoid." She pulled her arms around herself. "But you look at me like I am a person. You are a person. To you, maybe. Not to everyone." Daniel felt that familiar anger rising in his chest. He had seen how the other guards acted around the Valari, how they kept their distance, how they whispered when they thought no one was listening. He had heard the words they used: cursed, tainted, unlucky. "Why?" he asked. "Why do they treat your people this way?" Grace told me there was something about your biology, but she did not know the details. Una was quiet for a long time. The artificial sun sank below the horizon, and the first stars began to appear in the sky. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Valari females are very fertile, more fertile than almost any other species in the galaxy. We can bear children with nearly any race. Our bodies adapt. We can carry life where others cannot." Daniel nodded slowly. "That sounds like a gift, not a curse." "You would think so." Una's hands tightened on her datapad. "But there is a catch. Our children are always Valari. No matter who the father is, the child will have our skin, our hair, our eyes. The father's traits do not pass on. Only ours. So other species see this as theft, contamination. They say we steal their bloodlines, that we erase their heritage." Her voice grew bitter. "A Tovani man who has a child with a Valari woman will not see a Tovani child. He will see a Valari child. And to him, that is unacceptable." Daniel stared at her. "That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard." Una blinked. "What? A child is a child. It does not matter what color their skin is or what shape their eyes are. A child is a blessing. Period." She looked at him like he had just spoken in a language she did not understand. You really believe that?" "Of course I do. Where I come from, we spent centuries fighting over skin color and bloodlines and all kinds of stupid things. We nearly destroyed ourselves because of it. But we learned. We grew up. We figured out that people are people, no matter what they look like on the outside." "Humanity is very young," Una said softly. "Perhaps you have not yet learned to hate like the older races do. Or maybe we learned faster because we almost killed ourselves with hatred. Maybe we understand better than anyone how pointless it is." Una was silent. A tear rolled down her cheek, leaving a shining trail on her lavender skin. "You are crying," Daniel said. "I am sorry. I did not mean to upset you. You did not upset me." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "It has just been so long since anyone spoke to me with kindness. I had forgotten what it felt like." Without thinking, Daniel reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool and soft, like silk touched by moonlight. She did not pull away. Instead, she held on, her fingers intertwining with his. "Una," he said quietly, "you deserve kindness. You deserve respect. You deserve everything that the galaxy has denied you. And as long as I am here, I will make sure you get it." She squeezed his hand. "Why? Why do you care so much?" Daniel did not have a good answer. Or maybe he did, but he was not ready to say it out loud. So he just shrugged and said, "Because someone has to. And it might as well be me." They sat together in the darkness, holding hands, watching the stars. And for the first time in 50 years, Una felt something she had almost forgotten existed. She felt hope. 6 months had passed since the Volari arrived at the refugee camp. In that time, nothing had changed for them. Other species came and went. The Tovani refugees were relocated to a colony world within weeks. The Kreth found sponsors and moved to a space station. Even the small group of Amari, who had arrived after the Volari, had already been processed and sent to new homes. But the Volari remained. Their applications for resettlement were always at the bottom of the pile. Their requests for resources were always denied. The message was clear, even if no one said it out loud. The galaxy did not want them. The galaxy would never want them. Daniel watched this happen with growing frustration. He filed complaints. He wrote reports. He demanded meetings with coalition officials. But nothing worked. The bureaucracy was too big, too slow, too set in its ways. And deep down, he knew the truth. It was not about paperwork or processing times. It was about prejudice. The whole system was built to keep the Volari down, and no amount of paperwork would change that. He extended his deployment, then extended it again. His commanding officers started asking questions. His career was suffering. Grace warned him that he was making powerful enemies. But Daniel did not care. He could not leave. Not now. Not when Una needed him. Their relationship had grown deeper with each passing week. They spent every free moment together. They talked about everything. Their childhoods, their dreams, their favorite foods, their worst memories. Daniel learned that Una loved the color blue, that she was afraid of deep water, that she hummed old Volari songs when she thought no one was listening. Una learned that Daniel had grown up on a farm in a place called Iowa, that he had joined the military to see the stars, that he had a sister named Emma back on Earth who sent him messages every week. They had not kissed. They had not crossed that line. But both of them knew it was coming. The tension between them grew with every conversation, every accidental touch, every moment of eye contact that lasted a little too long. It was only a matter of time. One evening, Daniel found Una in the small room she used as an archive. She had set up holographic displays showing images of her lost homeworld. Mountains covered in purple flowers. Cities with towers of white stone. Oceans that glowed green under twin moons. It was beautiful, and it was gone, and Una sat in the middle of it all with tears running down her face. Una, Daniel said softly. She looked up. Her eyes were red from crying, but she managed a small smile. Daniel, I did not hear you come in. What is wrong? Nothing is wrong. I was just remembering. She gestured at the holographic images. Today would have been the festival of stars on my world. The biggest celebration of the year. Everyone would gather in the streets. There would be music and dancing and food. Children would release lanterns into the sky, carrying wishes to the ancestors. She wiped her eyes. I was 8 years old the last time I saw it. I remember my mother lifting me onto her shoulders so I could see the lanterns rise. There were thousands of them. It looked like the stars were falling upward. Daniel sat down beside her. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. It was a long time ago. I have made peace with it. She paused. Most of the time. They sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by the ghosts of a dead world. Then Una turned to face him, and there was something new in her eyes. Something serious and scared and determined all at once. Daniel, I need to tell you something. He waited. I am not stupid. I see how you look at me. I see how I look at you. Her voice trembled. I know what is happening between us. And before it goes any further, you need to understand something. You need to understand what you would be getting into. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, The artificial lights of the camp glowed against the darkness. Other refugees moved through the streets, living their small lives, carrying their small hopes. "No one marries my race," Yuna said. Her back was to him, but he could hear the pain in her voice. "Not ever. In all my years, I have never seen a Valari bride. I have never attended a Valari wedding. Other species take us as servants, sometimes. As workers. Sometimes as—" She hesitated. "As concubines. For our fertility. They use us to produce children, and then they throw those children away. Because Valari children are worth nothing to them. Less than nothing." She turned to face him. Tears were flowing freely down her cheeks now. "I can bear children, Daniel. Strong children, healthy children. My body was made for it. But no one wants children with me. No one wants to stand beside me and call me wife. No one wants to build a life with me. That is the reality of what I am. That is the future I can offer you. Nothing." Daniel stood up slowly. "I understand if you want to walk away," Yuna continued, her voice breaking. "I understand if this is too much. I just needed you to know the truth before we went any further. You deserve to know what you would be giving up. A normal life. A family that the galaxy would accept. A future that does not carry the weight of being tied to an outcast." She was crying openly now, her shoulders shaking with sobs. She looked small and fragile and utterly alone. Daniel crossed the room in 3 quick steps. He took her hands in his. They were trembling like leaves in a storm. And then he dropped to one knee. Yuna gasped. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have done weeks ago." He looked up at her, his eyes steady and sure. "Yuna of the Valari. I do not have a ring. I do not have wealth or power or anything the galaxy considers valuable. All I have is myself. My heart, my hands, my future. And I want to give all of it to you. Daniel, you cannot. You do not understand what this will mean. Your career, your standing, I understand perfectly." His grip on her hands tightened. "The galaxy says no one marries your race. The galaxy says you are cursed, unlucky, unwanted. The galaxy is wrong." He smiled, and it was a fierce smile. The smile of a man who had made up his mind and would not be moved. "The hell they won't." Yuna stared at him. For a long moment, she could not speak, could not breathe, could not believe what was happening. "Will you marry me, Yuna?" Daniel asked. "Will you let me prove the whole galaxy wrong?" She fell to her knees in front of him. She put her hands on his face. She looked into his eyes and saw no doubt, no hesitation, no fear. Only love. Only absolute, unshakable love. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." And in a small room on a gray moon, surrounded by the ghosts of a dead world, 2 people held each other and wept with joy. News traveled fast in the galactic community. Within days of Daniel's proposal, it seemed like everyone knew. A human soldier had asked a Valari refugee to marry him. The story spread from station to station, planet to planet, reaching the ears of diplomats and politicians across known space. And the reaction was not good. The Torvani ambassador was the first to respond. He filed a formal protest with the Coalition Council, calling the proposed marriage an insult to civilized species everywhere. Humanity is too young and too foolish to understand what they are doing, he declared in a public statement. The Valari are genetic parasites. This union will produce aberrations. It will weaken the human species and drag them down to the level of the cursed ones. The Kreth trade delegation followed with threats of economic sanctions. Human goods will no longer be welcome in Kreth markets, they announced. We will not do business with a species that chooses to contaminate itself. Other species joined the chorus of disapproval. The Amari refused to share diplomatic functions with human representatives. The Tovani withdrew from joint military exercises. Even species that had been friendly to humanity began to distance themselves. The message was clear. Marry a Valari, and you will stand alone. Daniel's commanding officers summoned him to a hearing. He stood in a small room on a coalition space station, facing a panel of 3 admirals. Grace stood beside him as his advocate, her face pale but determined. And in the gallery behind them, Una watched with tears streaming down her face. Admiral Helen Stevens sat in the center of the panel. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, a veteran of humanity's first years in space. She had always been fair to Daniel, but now her expression was hard and unreadable. "Captain Park," she said, "you understand why you have been called here?" "Yes, ma'am." "You understand that your proposed marriage has created a diplomatic crisis?" "I understand that some species are upset, yes." Admiral Stevens leaned forward. "Some species?" "Captain, we have received formal protests from 6 major coalition members. Trade agreements are being threatened. Military alliances are at risk. Earth's position in the galactic community has never been more fragile, and you have made it worse." The Tovani ambassador, who had been given a seat at the side of the room, stood up. His skin was green and scaled, his eyes yellow and cold. "This is not merely about one marriage," he said. "This is about principles. The Valari are a cursed race. Their genetics pollute everything they touch. By marrying one of them, this human is declaring that humanity has no standards, no dignity, no." "Ambassador," Daniel interrupted. His voice was calm but firm. "May I speak?" The ambassador sputtered. "You dare interrupt me?" "Yes, I dare." Admiral Stevens raised a hand. "Let the captain speak." Daniel turned to face the alien delegation directly. There were representatives from 5 different species, all of them looking at him with expressions ranging from disgust to pity. Behind them, through a window, he could see the stars. Those same stars he had dreamed of as a boy on his family's farm. Those same stars he had traveled so far to reach. "I grew up on a small farm in Iowa," he began. "It is a place on Earth. Very ordinary, very quiet. But my grandmother used to tell me stories. Stories about a time when humans hated each other because of the color of their skin, because of where they came from, because of who they loved." He paused. "We had wars over it. Terrible wars. We built systems designed to keep certain people down, to deny them rights, to treat them as less than human. And it nearly destroyed us." The room was silent. Even the Tovani ambassador had stopped his protests. "But we learned," Daniel continued. "We grew. We figured out that the things that divide us are less important than the things that unite us. We decided that every person, no matter what they look like or where they come from, deserves dignity and respect. That is the lesson of human history. That is what we bring to the galactic community." He pointed at the Tovani. "You call yourselves advanced. You have technology that seems like magic to us. You can travel between stars in the blink of an eye. But you still judge people by their genetics. You still treat entire species as garbage. You call the Valari cursed, but the only curse I see is the blindness in your hearts." The ambassador's face turned dark green with anger. "How dare you lecture us, human? Your species has been in space for 3 years. We have been here for millennia. And in all those millennia, what have you learned? You have learned to hate. You have learned to fear anything different. You have learned to look down on the weak instead of lifting them up." Daniel shook his head. "For all your technology, you are children. And it is time someone told you so." He turned to Admiral Stevens. "Ma'am, I know this marriage will have political consequences. I know it might cost humanity its seat at the coalition table. But if that seat requires us to abandon our principles, if it requires us to treat innocent people like dirt, then maybe that seat is not worth having." Admiral Stevens was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at the other admirals. Some silent communication passed between them. "Captain Park," she said finally, "this hearing is not about whether you can marry. As far as Earth is concerned, you are free to marry whomever you choose. That has always been our way." The Tovani ambassador made a sound of disgust. Admiral Stevens ignored him. "This hearing is about whether you understand the consequences of your choice. And it seems you do." She stood up. "The marriage may proceed. And if our allies do not like it, they can file complaints. We will read them carefully, and then we will ignore them." A murmur of shock went through the alien delegation. The Kreth representative stood up. "You will regret this, humans. You will be isolated. You will be." "We have been isolated before," Admiral Stevens said. "We survived. We always do." She looked at Daniel and nodded. "Good luck, Captain. Make us proud." Daniel saluted. Then he turned and walked toward Una. She ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. "They tried to stop us," she whispered. "They failed." Daniel held her tight. "They will always fail. Because we have something they do not understand." "What is that?" He pulled back and looked into her violet eyes. "We have each other. And that is stronger than any empire, any coalition, any force in the universe." Behind them, the alien diplomats filed out of the room, their protests falling on deaf ears. And somewhere in the galaxy, other species began to whisper about the humans, about their strange courage, about their foolish, beautiful refusal to accept the way things had always been. Something was changing, and it started with two people who refused to let the galaxy tell them who they could love. The wedding took place on Earth, in a small church in the mountains of Colorado. Daniel had chosen the location carefully. He wanted Una to see the best of his world. The green forests, the blue sky, the mountains that touched the clouds. He wanted her to know that this place, this beautiful planet, was now her home too. They had expected a small ceremony. Just a few friends, a few family members, maybe some of Daniel's old military colleagues. But word had spread through the Valari refugee network. And when the day came, thousands of them arrived. They came from every corner of the galaxy, from refugee camps and space stations and the dark corners where they had been hiding for decades. They came in old ships and borrowed shuttles and anything that could carry them across the stars. They came because they had heard that one of their own was getting married. Really, truly married. Not as a servant or a concubine, but as an equal partner. As a bride, many of them had never seen a Valari wedding. The tradition had died when their world died. But they came anyway, driven by a hunger they could not name. A hunger to witness something they had been told was impossible. The church was too small to hold everyone. So the ceremony was moved outside to a green meadow surrounded by pine trees. Thousands of Valari sat on the grass, their lavender skin and silver hair creating a sea of color against the green. Human guests mingled among them, offering food and blankets and words of welcome. Many of the humans had never met a Valari before. By the end of the day, they would consider them friends. Daniel stood at the front of the meadow, wearing his military dress uniform. Grace stood beside him as his best man, her eyes already wet with tears. She had been with him through everything. The protests, the hearings, the threats. She had never wavered, and Daniel knew he would never be able to repay her loyalty. Music began to play. An old Earth song, soft and sweet. And Una appeared at the edge of the meadow. She wore a dress of white and silver, designed by human tailors who had worked for weeks to create something worthy of the occasion. Her silver hair was braided with flowers, blue ones that matched the color of the Earth sky. She looked like a dream. She looked like hope given form. Walking beside her was Helen Park, Daniel's mother. Una had no living family, So Helen had offered to take that role. She had welcomed Yuna into her home and her heart without a moment of hesitation. Family is not about blood, she had told Yuna. Family is about love. And you are loved. Yuna walked slowly toward Daniel, her eyes never leaving his face. The Valari in the audience wept openly. Many of them had waited their entire lives to see this moment. A Valari bride walking toward a groom who wanted her. Truly wanted her. Not for her fertility. Not for what she could give him. Just for herself. When she reached Daniel, he took her hands in his. They were trembling, but so were his. The ceremony was simple. They had written their own vows, as was the human custom. Daniel went first. Yuna, he said, when I met you, I was just a soldier doing a job. I did not expect to find anything in that refugee camp except dust and suffering. But I found you. I found someone who had lost everything, but still had the strength to preserve her people's history. Someone who had every reason to give up, but refused. Someone who looked at the universe with eyes full of pain and still found room for hope. He squeezed her hands. The galaxy told me that no one marries your race. The galaxy told me that loving you would cost me everything. But the galaxy was wrong. Loving you has given me everything. You are my partner, my best friend, my home. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel unwanted again. Yuna was crying now, tears running down her lavender cheeks. But she smiled, and her smile was brighter than any star. Daniel, she said, my people have a saying. When you lose your world, you become a ghost. You walk through life, but you are not truly alive. For 50 years, I was a ghost. I watched my people suffer. I watched the galaxy turn its back on us. I stopped believing that things could ever be different. She took a deep breath. Then you came. You looked at me like I was a person. You listened to my stories. You held my hand when I cried. You showed me that kindness still existed, even in the darkest corners of the universe. You made me feel alive again. Her voice broke, but she continued. You asked me once why I agreed to marry you. Why I said yes, even though I knew it would bring trouble. The answer is simple. You saw me. When no one else would look, you saw me. And that is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. The minister pronounced them married. Daniel kissed Yuna, and the meadow erupted in cheers. Thousands of voices rose together, human and Valari, celebrating something that had seemed impossible just 1 year ago. The reception lasted long into the night. There was food from a dozen different worlds, music that blended Earth and Valari traditions, and dancing that continued until the stars came out. Daniel watched Yuna laugh with his mother, dance with grace, and talk with Valari elders, who wept with joy at being able to attend a wedding after so many years. In the years that followed, Earth became the first planet to offer permanent settlement rights to the Valari. It started small, just a few families given land in quiet places. But word spread, and more came. Humans welcomed them as neighbors. They shared meals, celebrated holidays, and built communities together. The old prejudices of the galaxy seemed far away. Daniel and Yuna had 3 children. All of them were Valari, as expected. Lavender skin, silver hair, violet eyes. Daniel thought they were the most beautiful children in any galaxy. Their eldest daughter, born on a spring morning in a hospital in Denver, was named Hope. It seemed fitting. One evening, when Hope was 4 years old, she asked her father a question. They were sitting on the porch of their farmhouse, watching the sun set behind the mountains. "Daddy," she said, "why did other people not like Mommy's family?" Daniel looked at his daughter. She had her mother's eyes, deep and curious and full of wonder. He thought about how to answer. He thought about all the hatred and prejudice and cruelty he had witnessed. He thought about the Torvani ambassador and his ugly words. He thought about the system that had kept the Valari down for decades, but in the end, he decided to keep it simple. "They forgot something important, sweetheart," he said. "What did they forget?" Daniel lifted Hope onto his shoulders and pointed at the sky. The first stars were appearing, tiny points of light against the darkening blue. They forgot that love is not about what you can get. It is about what you can give. Hope did not fully understand. She was only 4, but she remembered the words. And years later, when she grew up and had children of her own, she told them the same thing. And they told their children. And the story passed down through generations, carrying with it the memory of a human soldier who looked at the galaxy's outcasts and said the words no one else would say. The hell they won't. And the universe, slowly but surely, learned to believe him.